So we are here with Lauri Novak this hour of our monthly reoccurring Zoom meeting. And we're going to do our little interview with her this time. I'm really happy that she's here. Yay. We've had some pretty good people. We had Dave, we had Laura Lee, and now we have Lauri. And I just want everybody to know, especially the people that are here, that those other two interviews are up now. So if you'd like to go and see the one with Dave or Laura Lee, you're more than welcome to. There's a lot of information in them. So, Lauri.
Yes.
One of our first questions was, when did you start in the hunt and why?
Why? I don't really know. No, I've been in the hunt or a part of the hunt since the very first one. So I think there were 13 or 20 of us or something like that. I can't remember exactly how many in the first hunt. So Krista Ray had just kind of put a thing out, that she was going to try this. Like she was doing this with her kids or something in person, like they would go out during the day and she would give them words. So she thought she would try it, on Google Plus. And there were, I think it was 20 or 30 maybe, but no more than that. In the very first hunt, and we had all 26 words. There were 26 letters, a word for each letter. And that hunt was more about we actually went out and found things, people weren't like, at that point, nobody was like creating, things. Although Hilmar created her hamburger hat for that round. So she made this big, huge hamburger hat, which was amazing. And she shot herself with the hamburger hat on. So, and then, it just kept going. And we ended up at one point, there were like 600 people in the hunt about. Wow. So, and it just was, it was a fun way to just get out your camera and do something, and meet a bunch of people, that's how a lot of us got to know each other on that platform, really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, so what do you shoot with?
I have a Canon 6D, full frame DSLR. I'm still old school, if you want to call it that, because that's getting to be old school, because I'm not switching to mirrorless. I'm not switching, to anything. In fact, 3 years ago, I had rented a second camera to take with me when I went to Antarctica. And my camera, like the screen went black. So I came home and I had the new Canon mirrorless in my cart, and I'm like, I do not need this, right? This camera's fine. So I took it and got it fixed. And then I ended up, the same camera was on special at B&H for like way cheap. So I bought a second one. So I have two of them and use one as a backup, which I question even because I haven't touched it, I don't need a backup, but if I start traveling again and stuff, it's nice to have.
Traveling, if you have a second camera, I think that's kind of good, because look, you said your screen went black.
Yep.
And
yeah,
did it go black when you were done down there, or did it go black?
No, it went in not in the middle. It was like probably the second to the last day, or the last day. Second to the last day. And it was weird because I was taking down there. You don't want to be switching lenses because it's cold or windy or rainy or whatever. So that's why I rented a second body. So I had a zoom lens on one camera and my 17 to 40 on the other, so that I didn't have to switch. So that day when we went out on a landing, we went on a Zodiac to go to the shore. I decided I'm just going to take the one camera this time, because 99% of the time I shoot with my 100 to 400 lens anyway. Well, that's the day that it didn't work. Oh. So one of the guys loaned me one of his cameras, and somebody else went back to the ship and got my other camera for me. So that was that. But then I ended up continuing. I mean, it's the same camera I have. I just bought a new one and had that one fixed instead of buying a whole new system because it's
I,
just not
I know,
necessary.
I think Paul did the same thing recently, and like now his camera
Yes.
has, you know, uh, so many clicks on it, but now it's almost brand new. So now he's
Right,
got
right,
all those
right,
clicks to go back on. So that's, yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. It's just not always necessary to have the latest and greatest, you know? It
No,
depends on what you do. It depends on what
yes,
what you want and what you do.
right. Okay, so what is your favorite subjects to shoot? I mean, I kind of know this, but
Most people probably do. I shoot a lot of architecture. Obviously, I live right outside of Chicago, so that's kind of it's not a given because not everybody that lives here shoots architecture, but, and I shoot travel stuff. I think that's kind of a general subject, but most of my stuff would be considered fine art photography. Not, I don't shoot a lot of people if I can help it. Um, I don't really even shoot that much landscape stuff anymore. Like I said, I use my 100 to 400 lens quite a bit. So it's a lot of details. Even when I'm out hiking and stuff, it's more details than the bigger picture stuff.
I do have to say though, because I have a couple of your pieces that
Mhm.
you did in France. I
Yeah,
love bicycles, so whenever
right.
anybody does bicycles, I have to do a bicycle. But I love your bridge shot.
Yeah, this one. If you want, do you want me to share my
Yeah,
screen?
sure. So everybody else can see it. I'm sure a lot of you,
This is an old
it,
shot.
it is, but I just love this shot. It's just so beautiful.
Where are we? There, I think you can see that. No, can you see
There it
Yes.
that?
is.
Yes.
That's gorgeous.
So and it is old. I think 2013 or even before that. This doesn't even look like this anymore. It makes me so sad.
Oh,
They rebuilt, like it's got a path that has supposed to used to go under there for years, but it was closed for years. And they finally have fixed it all, but now they put a tunnel to the left of it for the path to go through, and it's not the same. But I still go over there every now and then.
I just like that you still have the memory of that, with the way it originally looked, because that just is so beautiful. The clouds in the background, the tree to the side. I just think that's just such a beautiful landscape shot. Really is.
It was the perfect like moment, right? The
Yeah,
clouds were everything just kind of worked that day. It could have been
yeah,
blue skies, it just but that's why I go back there all the time. Even
that,
even though it doesn't look like this anymore. I mean, that
yeah.
bridge is still there, but you can't you can't get shots of it like this anymore. Like the trees on the left and stuff is all gone.
Oh, that's
So,
too bad.
and the other shore for a long time is so overgrown that you can't even see like part of the bridge anymore either. So it just it's just it all changes. But that's why we continue to go back to the same places
Right.
to see if there's anything better or worse or more interesting or different times of day and different weather and but
Where was
So
this?
our
this is
fourth
about it's only
question,
20 miles from my house, or not even 20 miles. It's probably 10 minutes from my house.
you have so much out there though. I mean, you, I have to say I used to go out a lot more than I do. Um,
Oops, sorry.
since COVID, but you have so much to shoot out there. That's, I guess, the most fun thing about that. I could go downtown into San Diego, but I mean, there's some interesting things, but I don't think there's as much as there is in Chicago. Yeah.
But I think that it depends on what your personal interests are, right?
True.
Because, and I've had this discussion with somebody. I have, I used, I've done mentorship programs and stuff, and I had someone in a program who was like, "We don't have architecture here," and I'm like, "Okay, my parents are from a town in North Dakota that has like 20 people in it now, right? I have architectural shots from there.
Yes.
It's like the VFW or the old broken down barns, I mean, it's all architecture,
Yeah.
it's still buildings, it's still structures, and they just have more character. They're either coming apart or rusted or whatever, so it depends again, what your interest is. Like you walk around San Diego, you might not see, I would see totally different than you would,
Of course.
right? I would find those things, they would just like appear to me. Like I'd be like, how can you not, there, look at that, where you see it every day, or you're used to being in San Diego and you don't, like, you're not looking for those reasons to take photos that way.
Yeah. Okay, so the fourth question is what do you struggle with?
I personally struggle with like my own focus and spending time on things that I should. I have such a backlog of images. I know we all do. I have huge scanning projects that I just can't even wrap my head around, Um, and getting out and shooting. I haven't touched my camera for probably 2 weeks. I just don't go out, you know. Sometimes I get to the point where it's like, what is the point of all of this? And then I just don't bother, because what is the point of all of this? Like, why do I need one more picture of whatever in my backyard, or another squirrel in my backyard? Or, I mean, there's a reason I don't really take pictures of flowers, because I've never been interested in flowers, but I'm like, I don't need another photo of a flower. But your flowers are amazing and you love flowers, right?
Yeah.
So we take pictures of what we're interested in, what we love, you know. So if I don't have anywhere to go or travel to, and even going into Chicago now is, I'm not quite so keen to go in by myself anymore, because it's just not necessarily safe always, which is sad. And it's fine in some places, but even then, you just don't always, it's just, you can't, it's hard to not let the fear stop you. But and I just go wander around out in the forest preserves and stuff, and then it's like, what am I shooting this for? What am I going to do with this photo? But then it becomes like therapy, right? It's just getting out and doing it. I might throw away all the images that I took, and it just doesn't matter, because I was actually out using my camera, practicing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what, if you have, because we talked about this, what would be your worst photo experience?
Probably having to be on I'm much better by myself than in groups. When I'm leading photo tours, or if I'm on a photo walk with people, I don't take very many pictures in those situations. So, and somebody actually posted a thing on Facebook the other day of a workshop where there were like 8 people standing all in the same spot. All their tripods were all the same level, and the instructor was standing over here. And I'm like, that makes me crazy. Like, don't put me in that situation. I'll be looking the other way. Or there was a puddle on the ground. I'm like, my camera would be in the puddle on the ground while they're all shooting this like scene in front of them. But they're all coming up with the same exact image, right?
Right.
They're all standing in the same, and that's like, I can't, that would be a nightmare for me to be in a class like that, and I tend to wander off if that happens, which people might think is rude, but I came to a class to learn something and get images that are my images, not, but that said, those people could be, maybe they're just hobby people who enjoy doing this. They want to learn a little bit more, or they wanted a photo of this particular place that they've never been to, and that's fine. I get that, it's like when I take people to Chicago to go to the Bean, take that photo, right? Take that, you have to take the photo of the Bean, but
it's so big,
right?
In the way that you take that shot could be so many different. I've seen that
right, and that's
so many different people, and it's different every time.
Right. And that's what I tell people. So when you're going someplace, take those shots, take the vacation shot, take the, money shot, whatever. But then like walk around, put your camera down, and like, see what else is there. Like, what else do you see besides that like iconic shot that everybody takes, then you have something to bring back that's yours, that is different, So yeah, being in a big crowd of photographers, like I just saw pictures too of Delicate Art or some one of those places where there's like, hordes and hordes of photographers. I'm like, you could not pay me to go to that place with all those people. It's like the slot canyons, people love them and they're beautiful, but you're like herded through. You can't I just that's not fun for me,
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying because I do tend to like to go and shoot by myself. I don't like, because if you go with somebody else, this is so terrible. If you go with somebody else, you have to do what they want to do. If you
No,
go
but
by
that's true of
yourself.
everything, right? That's true like on vacation, that's like I traveled by myself for a very long time. So even going somewhere with my husband, it's like he knows, The
Yeah,
the good thing is you gotta find a person who's like he reads all the signs and all the historical information while I'm off wandering around taking pictures. And then I can come home and I can show him the photo and go, "What was this?" And he, will know because he read all the stuff. And I can't, I'm like, I don't pay attention to the tour guides and read the stuff. And I'm just more interested in creating images,
yeah.
so
I have one friend that we go out and she just lets me do whatever the heck I want. And I'm like,
yeah,
yay, I'll go with you
right.
anywhere.
But that's, anytime you're with more than just yourself, there's you gotta
Yeah.
some sort of compromise between both of you, unless you've agreed the same exact things. And when you're with other photographers, it's usually understood, right? So when you're with other photographers, there's no like pressure necessarily to be like, this is
No,
what we're doing,
because when we all go out, that's exactly that, like you said, that's everybody just does whatever they want.
Right, right. We're just all doing it together on
Yeah,
our own.
yeah. So
So
what has been your best and worst photographic advice that you've been given?
I think I'm trying to think of something somebody's told me. I think best is is to be yourself. And you know I've never been this way anyway, so when somebody gives me that opportunity to just be myself, that's going to happen. um you know I said it before, we shoot what we love, right? There's so much pressure, it seems like, out there if you're on social media and if you're trying to do something, or like to look like everybody else's stuff. And it's true in society in general, right? We all have to look this way, we all have to do this. Things are getting better in the world that way, but we have a long way to go. But it's the same with photography. It's like all these images that look the same. It's great, we have a lot of beautiful images in the world, but they're not different.
Yeah,
So I think that the best advice is just to shoot. Somebody told me, is just, shoot what you feel. Shoot what you feel. Um, Worst advice? I don't even know. I was gonna say, this is so wrong. I was gonna say learn your camera, but that's wrong. But that's because I'm not a technical shooter, right? I know what I have to do. I learned on film, I learned manual, I know how to do all that. It's not in the forefront of my head. If somebody asks me how I shot an image, I have absolutely no idea. When
yeah.
you have other people out there going, "Oh, it was this lens, this focal length, this ISO, I'm like, how do you even remember that?" And
No,
and
I'm the
I
same
don't
way. And
understand
that's
that.
one of the things that Laura Lee said last time too, was that she's not a technical shooter.
Yeah,
And she doesn't do all of the, I mean, I'm not going to say that I haven't, all of the stuff, the editing and all that stuff. She doesn't do a lot of editing on hers. What you see is what you get. And
right.
I mean, I think that however you are going to, like you said, you have to be you. You have to
Right.
shoot the way that you want. I love your architectural stuff, but I just can't come near it. But I also love my flowers, and I can
Right.
do
And
a
I can't shoot flowers like you do, and
lot.
we all have our own thing,
Yeah,
and
and
that's
I
the way it
so
should, it's the way it
wish
should be.
I so wish that I could do portraits, but I'm just not that great at them. And I see, Rita Zeisman and,
Right.
Karen Kurta and Paul
Right.
Howard. I just, wow. Right. I'm never going to come
But
near that.
that's their thing though,
Yeah.
I mean, and they're making livings, that's their job too. So, um, and again, it's fun to try. It's fun to, anything that you learn, right? So I've learned portrait. I worked for a studio for almost a year taking pictures of preschool kids, you know. You learn from that and you take whatever it is piece of that towards what it is you do,
Yeah.
It's like taking self-portraits. I don't do that anymore either, but I did for a while, and they're fun to do too once in a while. You learn a whole lot of stuff doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, Heather learned a whole crap load of stuff doing self-portraits and all that when you did stuff like that for the hunt and your multiple use, right? It's all learning. It never stops, really.
So with that, what are you currently working on?
Well, I am, I write for Photo Focus. That isn't a lot of my time, but I've actually stepped up and taken on a more of an editorial role also. So I'm spending a little more time working on those things. And I run the Photo Focus community. And so there's like 3,000 people in there. And it's just a photography community where people share images. There's sometimes presentations and random stuff, hangouts. I also, on my own side of things, I've been, this year was my year to start contacting art agencies and commercial people, designers who work with places like hotels or businesses, like corporate businesses who are building multiple buildings for artwork. They place artwork in these places. So I just started that. I've been working on that for like 4 or 5 years, and I finally pulled the trigger this year and started actually sending people information.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I had work in a gallery. That was like 2 years ago. The gallery was being built and constructed during the pandemic. Everything all got pushed back, as we all know. They did their best, but they just shut last January. In January, they closed the gallery. So that's not happening. But I'm actually speaking at that visual storytelling conference. If you guys, it's free. I'll give you guys a link for it. There's all kinds of people. I went last year actually to it or attended some of it. Scott Kelby, Frederick Van Johnson. There's tons of people who are speaking at this, and it covers a whole range of things, like not just photography, it's video, music, it's all kinds of stuff, inspirational stuff. So that's kind of exciting. It's kind of nerve-wracking for me because it's not something I've really done much of. But you got to start somewhere. And also somebody contacted me last week, 2 weeks ago, to speak for a camera club out in California. And that's happening this month. And somebody else contacted me to be on a podcast. That's happening this month.
So you're going to California?
No, it's virtual. It's a Zoom. I know. I'm like, oh,
dang.
Right. So there's that. And I'm still, working on my own stuff. I haven't been pushing too much on my tours, and I haven't really planned a whole lot because people still aren't totally comfortable with being out there and getting on a plane.
So Sandy just wrote that she's planning a trip to Chicago this fall. You're going to have one of yours.
I have one in the fall. It would depend on what days.
I'm mostly going there for the World Science Fiction Convention
Oh yeah. Is it downtown or is it out in Rosemont?
at the Hyatt downtown.
Oh, okay, cool. So, I trying to work on that kind of stuff, but I'm still hesitant, people are still hesitant,
So how often
guess
are
that's
you
about it.
doing your See Chicago?
right now I just have one for planned for the spring and one for the fall.
Oh, that works. So
Um,
that's good.
yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested in going, and
Well, I am, but hey, I got to get out there first.
I know, well, this is the spring date, and there's a code there to save $100 just in case anybody's watching that can come and wants to. But I'm at the point now where I'm like, if you have to sign up by like the end of this month, the 28th, or it's not happening. So, um, but yeah, I just like I said, my big focus this year is I try to pick one thing every year to really focus on, and this year it's the commercial stuff.
I think that is so cool. I just was I took my mom to the hospital, and I'm
Hmm.
just like, that's what's happening now. More
Yep.
and more of the companies are using
Right.
like
Right.
photographic artwork, not painting artwork, where that's
Right.
what they used to do. And I just think some of it is, I mean, a lot of it is local for our hospital. So it's
Right.
local
Right.
images. There's a
Right.
local photographer. So I just think that's so cool. I'm glad that you're going to be doing that.
Thanks.
You've
I
got a lot of
hopefully, I
beautiful
mean,
stuff.
hopefully things happen with it. I've had a couple of responses. The first month I sent out a letter with sample images and I didn't hear back. I heard back from one person who was like, I don't really use photography, but I love your work and I'll keep it in my files. I'm like, okay, that's a win for me, right? She doesn't use photography when she places it with clients, but my stuff stopped her and she thought, well, maybe. Then
Yeah.
the second month I sent out a letter again to all the same people, and I changed up the sample images, and I heard back from I think 3 other companies, fill this out, we'll keep it on file. So you just got to keep doing it and keep it out there. And the
I,
one of
I
the
think
other sites,
I think that's the biggest thing though, is you just have to keep at
it
it.
is, and I
And
there's
it's
people out
hard.
there who've asked me over the years many times for help, and I've tried to help. And I always use this analogy. It's like it is not like the field of dreams, and if you build it, they don't come. You can't just build it and they come. It doesn't work that way, right? This is somebody who's like, I don't want to keep putting my stuff out there. I'm like, well, then nobody's gonna see it. What,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you. It's called marketing, and we don't like doing it, even though that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
If you want to try to make a living at it, or you try to, no matter what it is, it doesn't have to be photography. If you're selling stuff on Etsy, and Heather's selling her stuff in the little markets and stuff around her, you have to do that. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
yes, there's viral, people who are Instagram, stars or whatever, but whatever that means. So,
Spot on, Elizabeth.
but I am not talking about you either, Cindy.
No, she's what she wrote in the chat about running a business. Okay,
Yeah, it is.
I have one more
Yeah.
question, and we might have
Yep.
already almost kind of covered it anyways. And then if there's anybody else that has another question for Lauri, please, or if it's a question that you want me to ask anybody next time during the interviews, please let me know, okay? So my last
And if you
question
want,
is,
if you want, oh, hold on. I was just gonna say, if you want, and we have time, I have a architectural presentation. I didn't know
yes,
how
no, I
long you
would
guys wanted
love
to do
that.
that. It's not, it might be too long though, so I don't want to,
Well,
it'd be if
we'll go
anybody's
through it.
interested. If
We'll
not,
see.
no
It's
worries.
only 10:30. We usually go for an hour, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you like certain software for editing more than others for creating your image, or do you use more than one?
I so I use Lightroom, and that's my catalog, right? So I use that to organize my photos. Um, I use it mostly for editing. So all the like little stuff, straightening and exposure and that kind of thing. Um, then depending on what it is, um, I use Lightroom mostly. I do use other things. I have Luminar AI, which I pop into every now and then. And I use a lot of presets. So I'll like before I even start on an image, I just like run through a list and see what happens when I click on things, um, because that to me is a starting place. A lot of times, especially with the architecture stuff, I kind of know what I'm going to do, or I have an idea if it's going to be black and white, or if it's going to be a high key black and white or dark. A lot of times I already know that when I'm shooting it, because that's how I see it. And then I also I love Nick silver effects for black and white. I have Nick color effects. I use that very rarely. Photoshop I use very, very rarely. Mostly I use that for removing things that need to be removed that I can't do in Lightroom. What else do I have? Topaz, I have it's Topaz Texture Effects, which isn't even available anymore. But that one I like to play. That's my like artsy, it does artsy things. So, but I don't do that very often either. That's about it, really. Most of my editing is done in Lightroom.
I have to say, because this is my pet peeve, and I don't know, maybe it's just me. I hate it when people don't fix their horizon.
You would think that it would be obvious, but I don't.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know that people are. I think that if you never learn the basics of editing,
I don't think it's something that I ever learned. It's just something that I saw, and I don't know. I mean, because I look at Lauri's picture. Her horizon is just so nice. And I'm just like, and even Heather's.
But that's like, so that's nice. Like the first thing I do, right? That's the first thing I do is straighten.
Everybody's hears their horizon is so nice. I don't know. I guess it's just me, and my OCD or whatever it is.
Well, there's that, but I think that it depends on your style of shooting and why you're shooting and how serious you aren't, or if you're out like messing around with your phone, and it doesn't really matter. It depends, I think, on the attitude you have too about it. If you're entering an image in the hunt, though, like that's like a hard fast rule, is to make sure your horizon is straight on something that has a horizon, unless it's blatantly not for a reason. If there's a reason it's not, make it obvious. Yeah.
Right.
But that's what the judges are going to look at. So if it's a hunt image, that's like a big no, But I'm sure I have images that are not straight, but I'm anal about stuff like that. So even if I'm on my phone, I'm like, setting it on. I set my phone on things so that I know I'm flat.
So now, anybody else have a question for Lauri? No questions at all? Oh my goodness.
I'm pretty much an open book out there, so.
I'm glad that you put that in there, your little thing in there for See Chicago, because if I was there, I would absolutely want to go, because I love how you talk about seeing things differently. And a lot of people don't look at things differently. Like, look behind you when you're doing a sunset, because a lot of the time the sky behind you is just as beautiful as the sky in front of you.
Right. Because it reflects. It's like when I sit in my office right here, and I have my blinds open and stuff, the people's house across the street, in the evening when the sun starts going down, it goes down behind me, right? So this window is facing east. The reflection in the windows in their upstairs bedrooms, I mean, people probably think, I don't even know, like, right? Like, I've like taken pictures with my zoom lens. They don't know, but there's like squiggly lines and stuff in there. And that's the kind of stuff that what do you do with that photo? Like, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's not like I'm going to blow it up and sell it to a gallery or something. You never know, but it becomes a practice. It becomes a practice to see further. Like I always say, see beyond the obvious, right? Like take all those photos that you initially catch your eye when you walk somewhere, right? but then stop and put your camera down and kind of just like, where am I? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I see? Is it raining? Is it, what's going on? Because all of that goes into how you frame whatever it is you're looking at. I think life experience goes into your images. I've always had a way different way of looking at life that wouldn't be considered normal necessarily. And that helps me in the way that I see the world. So that also helps in how I create images, because I don't see things the same way as everybody else. It's one of the questions that I've been asked when I used to exhibit at art fairs and when I've been out with photographers. Like I shot something on the street in Chicago when we were out at a Drink and Click event, and the guy standing next to me was like, how did you even know that was there? Well, I looked,
Yeah.
it was a grating in the street, or like that series of images I have that's ice on the river in Chicago, and there's reflections of the buildings and the ice on the river. I was with 5 or 6 other photographers who were all taking the river and the buildings. And I had my 100 to 400 or 70 to 300 at that time pointed down and at the ice on the river, right? Like, look somewhere else. It's the same thing, like I said, with everybody standing and looking one direction. Turn around, look down, look up. It just, and it's kind of a, I have made it my crusade, right? Like, I'm not taking that photo. My photo is not going to look like everybody else's. And I work hard to do that, It's like, go to the bean. Well, I go to the bean and I spend about half an hour to an hour before I even take my camera out, to see what's going on, where's the light, where's it reflecting? Because there it changes all the time, So it's just something that you have to work at.
Information. That's a good piece of information, that before you ever even shoot, really look at whatever it is that you're going to shoot. And
well, we get caught up, right? Especially especially if you're traveling and you're all excited, right? You're in a new city in some place that you've never been, or a new landscape place, or a new mountain you've never seen before, and you're like, you just want to take it all, right? You want to get all the images and just take everything. And that's fine. Do that, right? Get that out of your system, but then stop and then see what really draws you. What is it that really catches your eye about that mountain or that building, or, this town that I've never been in? What is it, to be more deliberate? A lot of people are not deliberate when they're out, and I'm not always deliberate either, because you just get caught up in stuff and you're like, oh, and you just do it. But again, I do that in my backyard all the time, but I come in and I delete all the images once I download them because they're crap.
Well, I hope your foxes come back. So that's.
I wish they would, but I don't think they will, because that was 2 years ago.
Has it? Yeah, it's been a while, huh? Wow.
And where they had their den was under our neighbor's shed, and they filled it in. So they filled it in the past. They filled it in because there's been skunks under there. There have been possums under there. There've been all kinds of over the years. This time they finally filled it in properly, so nobody can get under there. And I'm like,
yeah,
I want my foxes back.
All right. Well, let's see how much of your presentation we can get through.
We can. I mean, it's up to you guys, and I am happy to come back at some point, and actually I can do the C presentation that I have. That's all about all of that.
Well, we can.
But that's an hour. That's an hour.
But
so.
Do you have a catalog of some pictures that you would like to talk about?
Well, I pulled up the ones you asked me.
Well,
these are I'll show them. No, we'll talk, because I want to know why you. So Paula asked me for the bridge, and then pictures from France, right? I pulled up just a few, and these are kind of images that aren't really similar to most of my stuff. So that could be an interesting conversation, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is Paula's red bicycle.
Yay!
There.
I love the wall, first of all. just, I mean, age-wise, you could see there's so much age to that. And then the bicycle, the color of the bicycle, if it would have been blue either, red or blue, I would have just been
Yeah.
dying for that, yeah.
So this was just like right outside of the place that we stayed in. And I mean, this is in Cannes, France. And I mean, if any of you, if you've been to Europe, you know that a lot of places are like this, right? They're older, they have character, and the colors are like always, we don't have colors like this in anywhere here that I'm aware of, you know. So, and this is one that I took a little artistic license with and made it a little dreamier and stuff. And I, again, I don't normally do that, but that trip was a retreat with Karen Hutton.
Yeah,
And if you spend any time with her, you can't help but get a little dreamier because she just is, you know, and she gets you to step into your like creative, artistic side a little bit more, you know, than you might otherwise. But it just, I go by feeling, right? Does this feel like it looks right or not? You know, it felt like it should be dreamier, and it didn't have the same feeling when I didn't add that to it. This is more typical of what I would do. I put my camera on surfaces quite a bit, either on the ground or on buildings. Like I put my camera right up against a building, pointed straight up, or I put it on the ground, flat, straight out. And this is putting it on the trunk of the tree and shooting straight up. These trees were so interesting because we don't have trees like whatever these are. I can't remember now here, and they just were different. So
that's so gorgeous. And I love that you decided to put it in black and white.
it doesn't, because it's not the same, right? In color, it may be a little orangey, browny plus green.
Yeah,
You know, black and white obviously shows you the textures and shapes in a much more clearly than in a color would be. So that's more typical Lauri shot. Some weird, you know, trying to be a different perspective if I can. Cans, how people say it 18 different ways. Martin asked which one, and I'm like, it's in France. France. En français. So, and this is another
my
one,
point
right?
is they're
Yes,
two different cities.
right.
Uh,
And they're pronounced the same, no?
Yeah, but
Right. So how would you know?
well,
Okay, so it's
one's in the north and it's apple country, and you're constantly drinking essentially Applejack, and the other is semi-tropical.
no, we were in the south of France.
So the second one,
Yep.
got it.
Yeah. This is another one where you're just wandering around, and these little alleyways and stairways and stuff are all over in places like this down there on the south coast in all those towns.
now, is
And the
tree,
colors and the textures are just like,
is the tree painted, or is that an actual?
no, that's it's an actual tree.
Oh my gosh, just in
So
the
it's a,
stairwell.
yeah, it's I should have pulled the originals with these when I pulled them so I could
No, I
show
like
you.
the way you did it.
But that, well, I just show you what it actually looked like. And it, again, it is old world, right? So when I edited this is something that I took into Topaz Texture Effects. It's probably a very much almost like a one-click thing for me because this setting does that color and it worked perfectly for this image. But it added to the grit and texture that is already there. And again, that's how it felt for me. And that's why it got edited that way. No, where am I?
Ah,
This is another, obviously same place. It could be in Gras. I don't know which exactly. This one I edited not too long ago though. I pulled from my archives and added a tilt shift like look to it. And I don't remember what I used for it,
that's really cool picture.
but it worked. It just did something to the image that made it work better than being straight, no fuzzy sides.
Yeah. Well, it gives you, it focuses you on what you did was the stairs. And that's where it
Right. It
focuses
leads you. Yeah. It leads you down the path there.
Yeah.
And that one's probably not really edited much at all. I mean, that's just, I might have added a little vibrance and, but that's the colors and that's the grit and it's just, like I said, it's old world character. It has character.
A lot.
But this is a shot I use a lot for explaining, I do a lot of I shoot a lot of details. This would be more mid-range, right? So we all like, take big pictures. And if you're trying to tell the story of a place, you want to include all of it. So you would have like this, right? So like that's kind of a whole picture. And then you take the middle part, right? So you can show the pieces of a story and where you were. It just shows it in a little bit different way. I think those are only the ones I pulled. Yeah. So, I don't know if there's other things you want me to talk about.
Well, how was it different for you being in France and then being in Antarctica?
Well, it was, the degrees, temperature difference was probably about 80. In France was very relaxed, right? We were very relaxed. There was only 4 of us. So that was awesome. And we did a lot of wandering on our own, and you got to just kind of at a, again, very relaxed pace. There were a lot of time we could have on our own to wander if we wanted to. In Antarctica, so you're on a ship, right? And everything is kind of planned, okay? And everything is dependent on if you can or can't, if the weather is going to cooperate or not. So you can't do you can't go out on a Zodiac and go to the land if it's too rough outside, or if it's, the weather's not, you can't. So there's that kind of a thing. You're not sure, you're going to get to go. But you're also, I've been to Europe before. Okay. So this was just a different part of Europe for me. I love Europe. I would move there if I could. Antarctica is like the place that you think that you'll never ever go in your whole entire life, right? Come on, who goes there, right? Like it just always seemed beyond reach. It was always a dream trip. It was always on the radar, and I've had a thing for penguins since I was a kid. I have a clay penguin that I made when I was 5, that's always been there. So it came up in a really short period of time. I found out on a Monday and I left on Friday or Saturday. So I had 4 days, to make the decision and go. It was not a question for me though. Thankfully Mike, my husband, understands that about me. He's like, why are you even asking me? I'm like, okay, just check in. But when you're on the ship, it's everything is planned, right? So your breakfast is at this time, then the morning excursion is at this time, and then you come back for lunch, and then the afternoon excursion is at this time. And if you can't go on the excursion, then maybe there's a presentation. You're free to roll. You're not herded, and you're not it's not like on big cruises where they're like, okay, let's go. It wasn't
Not
like
very
that,
planned.
but it has to be, it has to be when you have 100 people. There were 70 passengers on the ship that I was on.
Wow.
But then once you're on the land, once you get onto land, when you're on the land, you wander around, there's rules. There's people that go ahead of you and place flags where you're not supposed to go or where you shouldn't go because it may not be safe. And even on the ship, you wander around as much as you want, so it's, it was a place though where you personally for me it was you just want to stand there and be like, wow, I can't believe I'm here, but I from a photography standpoint, I approach almost everything I do pretty much the same. I look for what catches my eye. I try to find different ways of doing it. In Antarctica, though, I was like, okay, I'm shooting everything, right? Because I'll likely never be back. I never
Yeah.
thought I'd be here in the first place. And oh my God, it's Antarctica. And it's just incredible. And it's hard to explain the scale of how big the mountains are and how big the icebergs are, and that you're there. It's just one of those, you kind of like, wow, and it's just a really awe-inspiring place. And I felt the same way about the Arctic too, though. But then I can go to Lake Tahoe or Tetons or wherever their mountains are, and I have that same kind of feeling. Those kind of places do that for me, So, and there were photography presentations on the ship because there was a photography symposium as part of that trip. So, which was awesome because you're going then listening to people who do this for a living. People who spend their time and lives mountain climbing and hiking in ice caves, and they know this situation, they know this landscape. But it's hard not to be overwhelmed, and it's also hard in those situations to actually put your camera down and remember that you're like, you have to take the time to be there too, and appreciate where you're at without the camera in front of your face. As much as you want to take it all, you're like, wait a minute, this is an experience, right? You don't want to experience all of it through this, because it's like taking a picture of the Grand Canyon, right? You're like looking at the Grand Canyon through your lens, right? It's this big. But when you put your camera down, it's like you can't even explain how big it is.
Yeah.
And I think as photographers, sometimes we forget that part. We forget to put the camera down and take it all in and be part of the experience, make it part of the experience, instead of just, I need to get a photo of it, So if that makes any sense at all to your question.
Yeah, it does. Well,
So,
we're just about to our hour point.
yep.
And so I just wanted to thank you, Lauri, for coming in and being our guest today, and for
Always.
everybody else being here and watching. And I hope that everybody will visit our website at the scavengerhunt.photography. It's a wonderful place for us. It's a wonderful
It
place.
is.